Have you heard about the President's Daily Brief? My friend Mike Baker does it, former CIA ops. Again, not one of the data nerds, ops. Well, what is it? How about 6 a.m. every day in a little condensed 20-minute podcast? You get up to date on all the goings on in the world and you get to sound smarter than all your friends. That's the President's Daily Brief. Go download it, subscribe. Joining me now, Mike Baker, former CIA operations officer and, of course, the host of President's Daily Brief. Okay, Mike, I'm going to rely on you for some things I can't get elsewhere. Mainly when you talk about Israel, Hamas, Russia, Ukraine, what you get is a lot of emotion. I don't care about people's emotions. I want to talk tactically. I want to talk about things on the ground. Where's this Israel-Hamas thing?
Yeah, and it's a great point, and that's the problem we've got right now is everybody's kind of leading with their hopes, and their feelings, as opposed to the reality of what this conflict is and how long it's been going on for. The current administration, there's a lot of different layers to this, but the current administration, the Biden administration, has spent the past couple of weeks tap dancing around the issue of Iran, and it's caused a lot of questions, right? And I think that the bottom line is for the Biden administration, because they've spent their entire time in office focused on a soft approach to Iran. I mean, they came in with that understanding. They staffed their Iran-focused positions. The U.S. envoy, Robert Malley, who, by the way, is suspended and had his security clearances pulled, all those positions were filled with people who were disdainful of the maximum pressure approach and promised a new way of dealing with Iran. And so for them now to turn around and say, Iran's responsible for what's happened in this horrible brutality that we saw from Hamas, which is the Iranian proxy, on 7th of October, for them to do that would be a complete U-turn and an admission of a serious foreign policy mistake. And I think they're very reluctant, obviously, to go down that road. But any long-lasting peace, any solution to this conflict, and any stability that we may see for the long term in the Middle East, you have to deal with the Iranian regime, right? To get there. It's just there's no other path.
Mike, can you lay this out for me? Because what I see is nations with different priorities. You just mentioned our priority. Doesn't matter whether I like it or not. Our priority is to try to soften things up with Iran. Israel has a priority. They're going to respond to that terrorist attack. They're probably going to be a ground invasion. Iran has a priority. It's different than all those. So if Israel goes in Hezbollah, Iran starts getting frosty up north, are we going to step in there? Because it sure sounds like we are going to step in there. There are two carrier groups over there, and they're not just having fun in the sun.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, I think, look, there have already been, in the past week and a half, there have already been over a dozen drone and missile attacks on U.S. facilities with U.S. personnel. And the Pentagon's own admission yesterday, they were slow to get there, but they said, we've had 30 military casualties so far as a result of these strikes on our facilities that are being done by Iranian proxies that are sponsored by Iran. Again, we keep going back to this same dead horse that I keep kicking. And yes, you're right. We've got two carrier strike groups out there, the Ford and the Eisenhower, right? And we've deployed additional squadrons of air assets. And Biden came out in a press conference and said, I've warned the Ayatollah, if you keep up these attacks essentially on our troops, we're going to respond. Well, so how many attacks are necessary before we respond? Because we've been hit 14 different times. That doesn't even count the 30 plus citizens that we lost, U.S. citizens that were killed during the slaughter on the 7th of October. So as much as nobody wants to have an escalating conflict, Iran is escalating the conflict. Right? That's the reality of it. So I'm not sure how we rationalize not responding to Iran and at the same time, calling for a ceasefire, which essentially is kicking the can down the road, asking for the status quo. And we know the status quo just leads to more conflict, because that's been the case for the past several decades.
Mike, why is Iran being so overt and so belligerent? As you mentioned, the attacks, they don't even really try to cover it up anymore. Everyone knows it's them. They don't hide the fact that it's them. But they're not, they're not poking Yemen here. They're not poking some jerkwater third world country. They're poking us. Why are they poking us so hard?
Yeah, well, look, it all comes down, again, it's complex, but in a way you can simplify it. And basically the Iranian regime, the mullahs, not the Iranian people. People always get torqued up when you say, Iran, or you talk about the Chinese regime. We're not talking about the people. We're talking about the people in charge. And so for the regime, for the mullahs, their objective here, they've been very clear about it, as have their proxies, including Hamas. It's the destruction of Israel. That's what they want. They are offended every morning that Israel exists, and they do everything they can to destabilize that region, and they have built up and maintained these terrorist proxy groups, Hamas, Hezbollah to the north, right? The Houthis, they around Israel, and that is their objective, to destroy Israel. So, unless they have a sea change of belief, they're going to continue down that path. They're going to continue trying to do this. And we also know that they are obviously working to develop their nuclear weapons capability. So at some point, this becomes a much more difficult equation. If what we're talking about is trying to degrade the Iranian regime so that they stop this nonsense, again, I don't know how any path to peace is possible long-term, which means a better life for the Palestinian residents, right? For the Palestinians, for those in the Gaza and West Bank. I don't know how you get to that peace with the Iranian regime in place, right? And continuing to sponsor Hamas and Hezbollah and the others who destabilize the region. I mean, one of the reasons they did this to begin with was because they did not want a normalization of relations between Israel and the Saudis. And, so 7 October certainly put an end to that.
Mike, final question here, because I could keep you forever and pick your brain about this stuff, but there's something tactically that I can't seem to shake. It's really, really bothering me. Okay, from Israel's perspective, okay, they're bombing the living crap out of Gaza, and everyone knows that it's fine, whatever. But eventually they want boots on the ground there. They have to go in. You can only do so much from a jet. Eventually they have to go in.
Right.
Why didn't they go in right away? The longer you go in, the longer they delay this, the more time you're giving a well-funded by Iran Hamas to set up a kill box in Gaza under every single pile of rubbles and IED. Why this delay? Every second they delay, that place gets deadlier, not more pacified.
Yeah, I don't dispute that at all. From an operational perspective, you got to get off the X, right? But there are, leading up to that, there are some operational concerns. They had to, develop the resources. They had to ensure that they had those in place. They had to, look at the intelligence that they had related to the hostages. The hostages are a unique and certainly, complex aspect of this whole operation. But they were also playing beat the clock in a sense, knowing that it would take very little time for international pressure to turn on Israel, right? And say, look, we've got civilian casualties. The terribly depressing part here is that Hamas counted on that. And Hamas, that's why they embed themselves with citizens. It's because they want, I hate to say this, but their currency are dead Palestinians. That's how they push the narrative. That's how they get the international world to turn on Israel. And sure enough, it's happened. Despite how horrific 7 October was, it's happened remarkably quickly. Now you've got the White House. You've got President Biden even saying, well, we want to get those hostages out, and then we can talk ceasefire. Again, a ceasefire gives you nothing but the status quo. And if you have the status quo, the only winner here at this point would be Iran.
It is the President's Daily Brief podcast. You see what I mean? Go download it, subscribe. Thank you, Mike. I appreciate it, brother. Come back, please.
Yes. Thank you, man. I appreciate you.